Okay, we're going to cover this talk between Paul Elam and Dr. Helen Smith. Paul Elam is a failed MRA. He's been around forever and hasn't accomplished anything. Also, even though he's talking to like 50% of the population, his channel barely has over 100,000 subs. That's nothing, considering how many men are suffering now. Now, Dr. Helen Smith is the closest thing we have to modern Esther Villar, but she's still B tier. She'll never really cross that finish line. Now, you'll see what I mean when we hear them.
Got it too. Okay, moving on. I don't think we could even have this discussion without first reflecting back on your experience with Men on Strike. I wanted to address that a little bit. And
Now, her book called Men on Strike, it was all right when it was written back in, 2012. Now that title is an embarrassment because men were never on strike. Men are still getting married and dating, even in this era of extreme misandry. No, men were being deselected. They weren't on strike.
see
The first thing we have to do if we want to progress is get rid of the posturing.
what has happened with your thinking on this, looking back 12 or 13 years since
Yeah,
that's
I wrote Men on Strike in around 2012. It came out in 2013.
right. So what was that experience like? Because I'm sure a lot of my audience has not heard that from you, at least not through my channel. And what's it like now looking back on that effort?
You mean what was it like to write Men on Strike?
Sure.
Yeah, it was really interesting, but it was sort of the culmination of so many years of my being a psychologist and dealing with men. And then I had a men's blog from the early 2000s onward, and just hearing so much. What really got me started was a post I had on should get men get married, and I was talking about some of the pros of marriage, and I
He was talking about the pros of marriage. This is what I'm talking about. She's better than the average woman, but in the end, she is still not pro-male.
mean, I got slammed. So the men came on and they taught me. It was, I heard like some of the stories. I was like, oh my goodness. And it really started me thinking. And so, Men on Strike.
And this is how she's better than the average woman, though. She gained criticism and she actually thought about it. Right? She didn't just have a knee-jerk reaction. But she's actually considering men as well. So, like I said, she's leaps and bounds ahead of the average woman. She's at the very far end of the spectrum. Right. But again, she'll never be 100% pro-male.
Strike, it was so great because I did, at that time, I didn't talk to that many men. It was more of a theoretical and a political book and sort of a social look at how men, like what are some of the things that are happening. And you cover this too, but like in reproduction and father's custody, there's so many issues with men. So I kind of went through the book and tried to find out like, what are these things that are going on? But then in the 10 years since, it's been 12 years, so many men now, and
All issues with men pretty well stem from women, though. That's the thing about talking about the issues of a gender. Who's to blame? Right? The other gender.
people will ask me, well, what's happened since? How do you think things are going? And I'm like, well, I'd like to go ask the men because even now we don't have any deep reflections of men. And what I wanted to do was to put together stories because the way, and Carnell Smith, do you know he's a paternity
Paternity
coach. He
fraud.
fights for paternity. But
Yep.
he said to me once a long time ago, he said, the way that I changed some of the laws in Georgia for paternity was to make people understand through stories and anecdotes and make things personal. They say the personal is political. That's a feminist type thing. But
But the feminists are actually right. All political motivations are personal. Ask anyone their political stances. They have a personal attachment to it. Right? So we can't let the feminist own something that belongs to all of us.
I think it also holds in this because when people can connect to a personal story. So what I wanted to do was take the theoretical part of Men on Strike and bring it forward to today and interview men. I wrote the book, I turned it in like a year ago. So it comes out February 3rd, and then I wrote it the year before. So I went out a year before the election and interviewed men around the country by Zoom, like at Starbucks. I just tried to reach men and sit down and really I had between 2 and 4 hour conversations because
But women could have had these conversations with us at the dawn of time. For her to ask these questions and not know, it just goes to show you that women don't care about men's issue. They don't want to know us personally, right? And that includes all the women that are dating or marrying you.
so much of what we know about men or we hear about men, even from recent books, is data driven, right? We've got like Richard Reeves, or we've even got.
Notice they say, hey, have you ever spoken with a woman? Well, these women don't speak with men, do they? The average woman does not speak with a man. They're not concerned with our inner selves at all. Remember, everything that women accuse men of is projection.
I guess Scott Galloway, who wrote the book on men, or Notes on Men, whatever the book is. But again, it's
Scott Galloway is a complete sellout. He sold men out completely.
it's personal, but it's also, I like the fact that I've gone out and asked a lot of men just to sit down with me and explain how they're feeling about all of these issues in society.
Yeah, Men on Strike was an analytical look at marriage, what was going
Wow. So you wrote a book about this, then you decided to talk with men? Okay.
on legally with men, and you have shifted to this much more personal worldview in interviewing these guys. And you did it across a broad spectrum of ethnicity and age groups. You really covered your bases in a lot. Were there any consistent themes?
Then you can't just say it's anecdotal. What is it? Anecdotal. I'm always getting that word wrong. But the point is, that's how they dismiss men's stories, right? They say it's only anecdotal. Yet if you get enough of these stories together, it's not really just an anecdotal story. You see, it's more of statistic building, right?
That seem to come up from group to group?
Yeah, you mean like as far as like the young guys, one of the things I found the consistency was that the young guys really are savvy and understand what's happening now in a way that they didn't. When I talked to young men for Men on Strike, I would talk to them and they'd be like, "Oh, well, this isn't really happening. If I go to college and somebody accuses me of sex harassment or some sexual harassment, if I'm innocent, I won't get in trouble." And I'd be like, "Oh, okay."
But the issue is that someone's making that accusation in the first place. And this is what's wrong with men. That's another reason why men's issues have failed for so long. Guys don't care about the other man. They don't care about the principle. And what pisses me off is that they do in any other aspect of their identity. You know, if the KKK shows up at university, all the minority men, they don't just say, "Oh, I probably won't get in trouble." They go after these guys, right?
And now guys are savvy. They totally get like, hey, you can be innocent, and if you're a man, you're guilty. And so I think they really get that, and they've seen their dads and their uncles and older brothers, and they know the drill. All the young men were savvy. It was each group I had a sort of a theme. So for the young guys, I really focused on college and the politics of college. For the middle-aged men, it was more, what did they think of their marriages? And then for the older men, it was sort of like, how have you made your, like, as you get older, how do you find someone and become happy or not find someone and become happy? Like, what are
You see, the older guys, they was somewhat safer of an environment, so their whole thing is just how to get the girl, how do you keep the girl? That's it. You know, that's all men's issues are to these guys.
those things that you can pass down to younger guys? And so, yeah, I think but I have to say that one of the common things I found that was so interesting is that
They
men,
don't say, hey, how do we make marriage more fair for men? They don't. They just say, how do I get this woman? How do I keep this woman? I'm willing to do with all the injustices. So men are their own enemy.
men, all the men, from the boys to the older men, just love women and respect women. And honestly, looking at it, I can't say the same about women. I can't say that women love and respect men. And
There you go. In one sentence, she said everything you actually need to know about this whole video. First of all, I've been saying this all along, and she's just supporting everything what I've said, right? Men worship women. Women don't like men. That's it. And everything they're talking about comes from that. That's where it originates from.
I think that there was a lot. I think men used to feel hurt. I think in the old days with men on strike, men would, if they did understand what was going on, it was more about disappointment and hurt. And now it's, what do they say? That the opposite of love isn't hate, it's indifferent. And now men are indifferent. And I think they're more,
No, 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 no. This is posturing. Men are not indifferent. No. Men are just as engaged as ever. They might give up because they've said, "Oh, I just can't. I've been rejected too often." But that's not indifference. Apathy is not indifference. Depression is not indifference. This is still full throttle emotional response.
apathetic to women and how they feel. They don't care anymore. And I think a lot of men are just like, you know what? If they don't, if it's not going to work out, I will do my own thing. Or they find some other way to find a mate that's more non-traditional or,
Okay, then they're not doing their own thing if they then go to find another mate.
I know on one of your shows recently you talked.
And traditional just means she's willing to accept my bribe. Doesn't mean that the relationship is good or it's fair or it's just. Just that this woman said yes. That's all a traditional woman is.
Talked about passport bros, and that's become a bigger thing in recent years. It
Yes, it
was
has.
before, but there's more men and
And passport bros is just men going to poor countries where the bribing price is lower. Again, it doesn't mean that men don't deal with the abuses of a relationship. Doesn't mean women treat them better.
that's maybe a whole different show about the pros and cons of that. And I know you covered that, but I think men are just finding different ways to be in a world that has become so denigrating and hostile. Um, and one of
Well, they're running around like shrews during the period of the dinosaurs, right? Men are scurrying. If men were actually finding a better system, they would do what they do in South Korea and actually fight women on a political level.
the things that bothers me the most is that many people from, I think even Jordan Peterson or other people think that this all takes place sort of organically. And I guess what I would say is it's not organic. It is a political move to denigrate and isolate men so that
But it is organic because like I said, that's why I said at the very beginning, right? This what she's just said. Men love and respect women. Women don't love and respect men. So that is organic. Dr. Helen, that is organic. All this political shifting derives from that organic nature of human beings.
they don't have any power. Certain men, some men have power.
I noticed you mentioned that the younger men had,
No, look, Helen, a lot of these powerful men get Me Too'd. That's what it was built for. It was take down men of status. Wealthy, famous men have been taken down with Me Too. So women still have more power than men. You think this couldn't happen to Elon Musk, for example? Some woman decide to make up some story about him. One of his baby mamas, he's got about what, 11 children from different women. Just one has to make a story up about him, and the other ones get on board. The next thing you know, Elon Musk is the new Bill Cosby. Sorry, women are in charge, Helen. They are now, and they always have been.
Become a lot more aware of the realities on the ground. And men had also begun to lean a lot more towards apathy. So is it fair to say that the more men learn about the reality on the ground in their lives, it lends them toward apathy and detachment?
I think it depends on.
The thing is, Elam, apathy is not going to save men. That's going to make things even worse. And since you're an MRA, you should be fighting apathy. You should be saying, guys, don't be apathetic. It's time to get on board with my group, and we're going to fight the system, right? We're going to fight legally. During this whole talk, Elam never says anything like that. This is why you are a failure, Paul.
A guy. Some of the men that I talked to, yes. Most of them, I would say there was a lot of still disappointment. When I asked one of the men, he was a young guy and he hadn't been able to find anybody because he was Christian and short, he said. But I think his biggest fear was that he would be alone and that there's just a lot of disappointment.
There you go. That's what men's issue is, right? It's not that our rights are being stripped away. I might be alone, right?
So, yeah,
Also, what was some of the bullshit they would say to guys who were looking for a girl? They said, go to the church. You'll find women in church. Some guys actually joined churches to find some woman, and that guy proved it didn't work.
I think in general, I guess the apathy goes towards more like the institutions. I did notice still that the men with institutions, if it was, say, something at school, if everybody was politically to the left, a lot of the guys would just tell me, well, I just kind of go that way. If I have to write a paper, I just make it a left-leaning paper. If I have to say something in class, if it's about politics, I don't say anything.
Yeah, guys keep their heads down. That's right. They don't fight it. The sad thing is you'd only need one or two guys who are absolutely 100% standing up for themselves. If you had guys in the classroom stand up and say, no, I'm not taking this bigotry, and call it for what it is. This is bigotry, and I'm standing for it. You would find a lot of these guys might join up and give some voice to it, right?
So I think that they are not, I don't know if I would call that apathy. I think they're afraid for their career in a sense.
Yeah, well, couple reasons, a couple things. I can see why they'd be interested in, afraid for their careers. Because again, men get tossed aside by society if they're not employed. So they want status, and they want to get the girl. The girl means a man needs status to get the girl. So that's why he fears for his career. Like that guy she said who went to the church, who was only 5'5" or whatever. It wasn't his height. It's because he was a nobody. Guys need status to get the girl.
So they're savvy as to what's happening, but I think outside of that, in their personal lives and stuff, I think there is somewhat more indifference. In the work life, it was the same kind of thing. I saw men, middle age, all men across the board. If something happened to them and they were just blatantly discriminated against, they would just say, "Well, it's just kind of." It was almost like you might want to look at it as a male thing, or where they would just say, "I'll just pull myself up and try to work through it or something, or just deal."
But that's not indifference, Helen. That's not indifference. That's giving up. That's knowing your place. Men know their place. They don't know their place when other guys are attacking them, but they definitely know their place where women are concerned. This discrimination originates from women. And Guys worship women, like you said at the beginning. That's why they don't do anything. That's why they say if guys get accused, they're worried about their careers. Why? Because they want one of these women who hate their guts in their life. So they're just hoping that, keeping their heads down and hoping that they can get by and get that career. And then one of these women who hate their guts, they can say, hey, maybe I can bribe her into my life.
With what I have in front of me. But I guess my sense was that to me, as a psychologist, I'm almost like it's learned helplessness, you know? And that bothers me because I still felt like when I talked to the men, there was still a sense of that. Like if one man was, the California courts told him he hadn't been paying child support. He was in the military. They'd been garnishing his wages. He'd paid the child support, but they said he hadn't been paying it. So he literally went.
Dr. Smith, I don't really feel too much sympathy or empathy for these military boys. Because the whole point is you go to war, you kill your fellow man, you kill men in your other country, in other countries, I should say, and then you hopefully take their stuff and bring it back home and bribe a woman into your life. You say, homie, don't play that. I recognize that for exactly what it is. So anything happens to these military boys, I say, good on them. I hope you suffer. And this is the other thing, Dr. Smith. Child support is enslavement. It's male enslavement. And men should be fighting for it for that reason, or fighting against it, I should say.
Went to California and he was in an army base like in, I don't know, Virginia or somewhere. He goes there and I said, well, how did you feel when the state of California said you didn't pay child support? And it was so important to him that he had paid it. Like he had a dad who was, didn't have a dad that was around and he wanted to be that good dad and he was doing all the right things. And then the state of California is saying, you're a deadbeat dad.
How is paying child support the right thing? Paying child support isn't being in your children's lives. So he's no different than his father was. You know what's going on here, Dr. Helen Smith, is because the child support is keeping him attached to his woman. That's what he cares about, not his children. If he cared about his children, he'd be fighting for custody. He'd say, no, I want them in my life. No, he's paying to signal to other women in case his wife dumps him that he's willing to pay. And child support isn't for the children. Dr. Smith, child support is not for the children. It's money that the woman spends for herself. The children might gain something out of it. This is the man paying the woman because she accepted his bribe earlier. That's it.
I said, how did that make you feel? And he goes, well, I didn't think about that. I just thought about my kids and what I was going to do to show them that I was a good dad, which I thought was admirable. But then I'm thinking,
No, he's lying. If he wanted to care about his children, he would say, no, I'm fighting and I'll have custody of them. I'll have them in my life. Paying child support is not the same as being there. So he's smoke screening you, Dr. Helen Smith.
and if all men are so focused on the here and now, that it's hard to really get anything done. But the other thing that I'm seeing is I truly believe that men are starting to fight back. And we see that in all of these, like X and so many podcasts now from years to like, I mean, you've been around forever, but like there's so many new young guys. Have you noticed like all these young
Yes.
guys who are on and they don't back down when they have women on and like they will just they will just be, I think all the other men are kind of watching this. And now in society, what's interesting is everybody knows what's happening. Like even when
Well, first step is happening. The guys are actually giving voice, which is good. That's the first step. But all these guys, a lot of these podcasts are just men arguing with women. They like to argue with women. They like to have women there in their space. That's not the same thing as fighting for your rights. So, okay, that's step number one. But a lot of these guys are not going to go beyond that step.
I talk to women, they'll be like, "Oh yeah, my boyfriend says like there's so many difficult women out there. He's so happy he found like I just we get along so well like, because I really understand that he's a guy and that men are like it's so difficult with women now. They're so entitled, so angry, and people just think it's
Not angry, Dr. Helen Smith, hostile. That's an important distinction. They're not angry, they're hostile.
even the good-looking tall men I talk to, they'll tell me like one guy told me recently he was in a bar and he said some woman I just looked at her and said hi and she came up and hit him. And I'm like, what? And he's just like, yeah, she hit me super hard.
Hear that, all you lookism guys? Is it even the tall, good-looking men? Yeah, women don't like men. What can I say? She said it at the very beginning. You could stop the video there.
And I'm like, well, did you tell anyone? He's like, well, no. But I'm like, this just women have become so aggressive that they literally think that they're very encouraged in our society, more so even than 10 years ago, to just we see this everywhere now. Women
No, you're getting it wrong again, doctor. Women aren't encouraged. They're not discouraged from acting out. That's another very important distinction. In other words, women always wanted to do this, but they were always limited. Now the limitations have been taken off. That's not the same thing as encouragement. No one's pushing that. No one pushed that woman to attack that guy. She always wanted to, but there were consequences in the past that have been lifted.
are very aggressive towards men and they belittle and harass them. I don't know if you've seen all this stuff with these Facebook pages. Are we dating the same guy? Do you?
Yes,
Well,
I'm
all the men
familiar.
I talked to, so many of them have been put on these sites. You know, if they and it's things like he was a bad date. He took me out and he wasn't good with money because he didn't buy me everything I wanted.
Yeah, these women are telling us guys that the relationship between men and women is one of prostitution. Women don't like men for themselves. Men have to pay. Now, you know that, Dr. Helen Smith. So all these good girls, like I get along with my boyfriend, that's meaningless. That's gibberish.
And it's the men. I mean, they feel like it's going to ruin their social reputation. But this is what we see because
No, they don't feel like it. They know it. When women speak, it affects. Women have real social power as well as political power, Dr. Smith. That's why the MeToo movement works so well. It's a slander machine, and it works. So these guys know their rep is going to be heard.
the culture now is so feminized that women just can get on and we
No, not feminized. Women have always been in charge, Dr. Helen Smith. It's always been a matriarchy.
all know that women as a whole, I mean, not all individual women, but women as a whole are much more collective and they're much more gossipy and they want to ostracize people. So if a guy isn't to their liking or they have an ex, they get on and they badmouth him so that other women won't want him or that his
And it works. It works, by the way.
life will be ruined. But I think the thing is nobody's actually believing a lot of this stuff anymore. I do think that
They don't need the belief, doctor. They don't need the belief. Like the KKK might not even believe in their own spiel, but it gets them what they want, the harm of other men, the harm of men of other races. So these women want to harm men. They don't need to believe in their own spiel.
and I do think it's a weeding process. Some of the men tell me like I'm kind of like, well, you know, if you are on that side and a woman doesn't want you because they've seen something on that site, well, they're probably gossipy themselves. Like maybe they're being weeded out.
That is coping. That's coping. Because you're trying to say there's a certain kind of woman who's not like a woman. No, you admit it at the beginning. Women do not like men.
out, like maybe you don't need that woman. But it is terrible because you would never be able to like just randomly say complete and utter lies about women. I mean, I understand that there are some sites, but it's very much
There you go. So it's not a feminized culture. Women are just in charge. Since men cannot do the same thing. There's no equality between the genders, and there never has been.
more prevalent. And one thing I do see is more men are going after, like some men have sued. Now, a lot of them haven't won against these.
Yeah, suing is not an option. Or I shouldn't say it's not an option, but it's not any kind of success. Because these women need jail time, right? That's the only thing that's going to deter it. Suing takes time and money. Your reputation, Dr. Smith, can be ruined in a day. But suing takes months. And also, men don't have the money for it. It shouldn't cost money to get justice. If someone breaks into your house, you don't have to go to the courts and spend months with lawyer fees to get the guy put behind bars. And that's the same with this crime. Wealthy men might go through it, but the average poor guy, he can't do anything like that. Oh, what working stiff is going to say to his employer, yeah, I need a month off because I'm going to be in court all day, every day. You know, bringing my $0 paycheck to pay for this lawyer that charges me hundreds of dollars an hour. Like it's not a feasible way of defending yourself. The whole thing is unjust. So suing is just, maybe I'm wrong, maybe it is just not an option. Not only that, women could take turns. Even if you were a wealthy man, you'd have one woman tell a lie, drag the guy down. When he beats her off, the next woman jumps in and tell her lies. You see, you need jail time. You got to bring the hurt to these criminals. Okay, that's how it works.
Facebook pages, but a lot of these things are just blatant lies, like he's a deadbeat dad or he beat me or something. And it's just ridiculous that I don't.
Well, it's evil. It's slander. It's criminal. Right? So this is why it's important. This is mere unfairness. This is injustice. Right? So men should not be worrying, doctor, about getting dates or having a wife.
To me, it just seems like it should be, like a lawsuit waiting to happen. But I think a lot of men are going after these sites, and more men are becoming bros, and they're telling their friends, "I saw you on this site." I get that a lot. I don't know if you do, but a lot of men tell me
Yes.
like, "Oh, I saw my brother, I saw my friend," and I had said, "Hey, heads up, here's what's happening."
The trouble with bro, it has negative connotations to it. And notice when men show any kind of solidarity with one another and speak up for one another, they're bros, right? They're not just good men doing the right thing.
You kicked things off in the book right away by talking about a female-centric culture and what most would call in the manosphere gynocentrism.
Female dominated. That's a much more accurate term.
How did we get here with that? What happened to make society so enamored of women and their issues and even their entitlements?
Now, for him to ask this, for Elam to ask such a question, shows you why he's a failure. A men's rights advocate, Belford Bax, who was talking about these issues in the early 1900s. That's 100 years ago. This guy either knows the answers already or he's a lost cause. Especially since, again, Smith just said it at the beginning. Men worship women. Women have contempt for men. That's where all this stems from. And again, nothing has changed, Elam, since again, 100 years ago, there were these issues. So he's acting like this is all new.
That's going on. That's it. The cause of both of your books, actually.
Yeah, it's all about the female, like dominated. It's not a dominated society, it's just female centricity. Everything is
No. See what I mean? Dr. Helen Smith will walk up to the cross, the cross line, but she will never cross it, right? She had it right. It is female dominated. But this is where she will reach her limit. She won't say the truth here.
about, I think that it's almost like the cultural things that happened after like in the 60s. I think truly that when we changed into this whole feminist sort of movement, a lot of people went along with this, and we got all kinds of, I think there was a march through the institutions, even to the point where the HR departments are predominantly women. And so when they started those in the
Yeah, the only reason it got it that way is because people wanted it that way, Doctor. Women wanted to dominate men, and men were willing to pander to women. That's why there was a red carpet for these man haters to come in, women in general, who am I kidding, to come in and just take over.
I think it was the late 50s, because Helen Andrews, who wrote in Compact Magazine a great article called The Great Feminization. Have you read her work?
No.
Okay, Helen Andrews she's very good, and she wrote a piece in Compact Magazine. It's called The Great Feminization, but she talks about how we got here. She ties it into the woke culture, but I think it goes way beyond starting.
There's no, woke is a useless term. Woke is just feminism, right?
In like the mid 2000s. I think this has gone back to the 60s, and I think it's kind of like once sort of feminism got in, everything started becoming about women. And I think as women got more and more power, remember, women spend 80% of the money in this country. Women are more than half the voting bloc in this country. Once women started taking over all the male spaces, they became, and now they're becoming the majority, so it's getting worse. But how did we get here? I think once HR departments and just
Invading male spaces, Doctor, is an act of hostility.
this whole shift from women into the workplace, which people always go on as great. Yes, but there's also downsides. What are those downsides? Well, rather than everybody,
There are no downsides. You shouldn't be arguing for women to stay at home and leech off men. Because women entering the workforce does not equate in and itself to attacking men and stripping us of our rights, right?
acting like, well, we used to have a frat house going on. Well, now it's become a kindergarten Montessori. Okay, everybody.
No, not a kindergarten. This is misframing. It's become a jailhouse where the women are the guards and the men are prisoners. That's how you actually frame it. Now I can see what's going on. This is when guys say, "Oh, they're Puritans and they're clutching their pearls." No, they're not. They're the opposing team, and they are here to conquer.
Is a Karen now. So and women have been. I think what's happened is there's like this idea that women should still be held as women. They're still privileged, so they have their cake and eat it too. We have this, these are women. We have to treat them delicately, but at the same time, they're
Not delicately, with reverence. That's what's actually going on here, Doctor. Now, you're either ignorant or you're lying.
empowered. And with men, we still treat them exactly the same. Men are still supposed to be that same, under the old contract that Myron Gaines talks about in his book, Women Deserve Less. A lot of people don't like Myron Gaines, but I do think the book he wrote, Women Deserve Less, has a lot of validity to it.
Yeah, exactly. Women aren't for equality, never have been. So the women's movement is one giant lie. And its motivation is to attack men.
I think what he says about dating and women and men is a lot of it has a ring of truth, and that is that the old contract is still in force for men. Men are supposed to be providers. Men are still supposed to do all these things. I think the other thing that happened is
Yeah, men are supposed to serve, but that really hasn't changed. There wasn't any difference in the past, right? You know, you went to the fishing vessels, they're all filled with men. There were no women on those vessels. In the mines, there were no women in the mines. Things have not changed in the way that you're claiming, Doctor.
politically we moved all those jobs overseas, so men don't have any leverage anymore, and we totally changed the milieu of the
Thank you for admitting it. So for men to have leverage, they'd have to have money. Right? Thank you for admitting that.
United States to make it a more global one for those global elites who are into, and I hate to, it's totally political. I mean, I can't say that the right is that great, but the truth is people on the left, it's so indoctrinated that who are their voters? They're women. They were minorities, but we're seeing, as we saw in the election, more and more minority men, black men voting on the right.
Yeah, the left has been indoctrinated by feminists. That's right. People who are hostile to men. Some men, of course, scamper to the right thinking that they're going to get treated better. But they're not. Because, Dr. Smith, you argued with a right-winger, Tucker Carlson. And he was totally for the enslavement of men. So the right has nothing to offer men either.
Because they know that the left doesn't like men. And they're struggling now. The left is trying to put out there that
Finally, she said that's where she's accurate. This is why she's B tier. The left doesn't like men. That's the correct framing.
oh, we want men back on. When they saw how this election went with these silent male voters, they're trying to pull men back in with like, oh, we sort of like placating men. But it's not true. There's nothing there for men. In what way is anyone on the left helping men? Like, I mean, traditional men. Now, some men, yes,
Oh,
but
any man. Any man. Non-traditional men are hated just as much as the traditional ones. So there's no point in you talking like that, doctor, unless what it is, when you say traditional men, what you're saying is men who serve and women who are willing to let them serve. Your type of woman who is willing to let a man serve her. That's all you've got to offer men in the end.
men who are not even traditional, just if you're male and you are a straight male, you on the left side of the spectrum are not going to get anywhere.
No, not just straight, any guy. Feminists hate gay men too. They find them useful attack dogs, Dr. Smith, but they hate them too.
It's very difficult from, are you going to get a promotion to, getting through school to, I mean, I talk to medical doctors who tell me that, if they even look the wrong way, they'll get slapped with a sexual harassment charge. The male doctors a lot of times are told, they'll tell me that they've got to work more, that they've got to help their female colleagues more,
Wow. They got to work more and they have got to help their female colleagues more. Right, exactly. This is why in the past, doctor, societies supported the men. They said, we want men in colleges, we want men employed. Because in the end, it's the men that keep society going, right? And they prioritize, they have their priorities, correct, right? Now people are just giving in the male hostility so much, they're willing to damage society. Anything to get the man.
women don't want to work in the harder situations. Like I talked to one man who was a guest.
Women don't want to work in the hard. Yeah, exactly. Working is for male peasants.
Gastroenterologist, and he said that the women took more clinic. They wanted like to work more in a clinic and have, they want hours that are shorter. And who can blame them? They've got kids. Of course, it makes
Oh, don't hide behind children. The male doctors have children too, doctor. No, don't hide behind them. Women just don't want to work, period. That's why they want fewer hours. We're all like that. Just that men are in a position they're forced to work more.
sense. But at the same time, it means that a lot of times men are left to kind of pick up the slack. And then if they say anything, they're whiners, losers.
Right,
And so I think men themselves have kind of opted out. Even doctors, we're seeing more and more doctors just, if they can reach any retirement, they're gone.
right.
Good for them. Good for them. Right. But also notice what she's admitting here is that what kept men working beyond the retirement time that they normally would is having a woman in their life.
So I just think it's been a lot of different things. When you say like, how did we get here? It's just been over decades of this feminization where everything is turning into, if you are not like a woman, something's wrong. We've also turned into a service-based society where everything is about service and health care and this, and we're told that these male jobs are not important or that they're sent overseas. And I think as we're bringing more and more manufacturing jobs back, I think that I do see more men out working construction and doing these types of jobs. And I do see, like, for example, I have a nephew who went into welding. He's 21 and he's doing great. And more men, young guys, are going into the trades more. So I think
Yeah, men are being chased out of university. The hostility there, the feminist won, doctor, the feminist won. Higher education is for women only now.
you're seeing some return to that.
No, don't get me wrong. It's a double whammy. It's the feminist, but it's also just colleges becoming more elite, right? It's all
And I guess we'll have to see how that plays out.
Um,
that is the elite of the United States do not want to have an educated population. Right. I want to be accurate. Okay.
you mentioned the advent of second wave feminism starting the ball rolling on a lot of this, and I agree with you. The left is not going to correct their man problem with a TikTok video of Tim Walz working on a pickup truck. But on the other side of this, we do have people like Jordan Peterson and others that are still out there with this mantra of get married, have children, don't look at the reality on the ground, don't talk about the family courts, don't talk about parental alienation.
Now, Elam, this is another show or display of why you're a failed MRA. You should never be bringing up Jordan Peterson. That guy is a joke. People don't listen to him anymore. So bringing him up just makes you look bad, right? Just sullies your reputation.
Don't talk about the false accusations that often come up during divorce. And they sort of avoid that topic entirely and are still promoting get this legal marriage thing going.
Well,
That's
they
not
have some idea that, and it is true. I mean, I think if you find a good wife, that would be great, but you can't, you have to.
There you go, doctor. Getting a good wife, right? What's a good wife? There's no such thing. You would have to change human psychology to have a good wife. Women select men for their status. That's not a partnership. But anyway, I've listened to this before, and I think she is actually going to say something like that. Let's hear it first.
Look at coverture. You know, Historically, coverture was held by men. That was the woman's rights were subsumed by the man in the olden days. And now they're subsumed by the women. Women basically own the rights in marriage. So you have to ask a person like Jordan Peterson.
Men of the past had to pay their wife's debts. The wife could rack up debt and the husband would be responsible. So even in the past, doctor, women still had rights that men didn't.
Or whoever is saying this type of stuff, like, if you have no rights, what is he just saying? As a man, you'll have, no, you don't have rights. Why would somebody take a bad deal? And this is ultimately what Men on Strike was about. A man is not going to take such a raw deal. There is no incentive for men to get married today.
Now, she did say it. The only problem is, Helen, men aren't on strike. Men do take that bad deal. It's gotten worse, as you've said. Every decade it's gotten worse. Not generation, every decade. And yet men are still seeking a female partner. Men are still getting married. So men do accept that deal.
Zero. I mean, yes, and people go on about companionship, and you get, you might get kids and things. Those are great things. They can all
Female validation. Because most companionship I see with men and women is shit for men. Not only do men not have rights, but the companionship is shit. It's the woman dominating the man.
also come without that legal piece of paper, but you might have just as much trouble because now we've got the common law and all the other things that go with it. So it is a more risky situation. So men have to weigh whether to get married or not in a much stronger, they need to think of it more rationally than women, because if a woman gets divorced, not 100%, but more likely
If men thought rationally, they would never get married at all. So men aren't rational creatures any more than women are. And men, the reason why they're not is because the women aren't choosing.
the woman is going to get um, custody of the kids, some type of child support payments. We still know that men don't, what is it? Something like of those men who are custodial dads, there's still only 20%. 80% of those custodial parents are women.
And even of the 20%, how many of that 20% was due to the woman not wanting to bother with the children? Right? How high is the percentage of men who fought tooth and nail against a woman who wanted the children and won? I bet it's a lot lower than 20%, doctor.
Now it's more than it used to be. We used to have 16% men getting it. We now have 20 from what I saw in the last poll. But still, the percentages are low, and men do have to think about these things.
There are women, by the way, that say, I don't want the children because I want a new man. I want a new provider. And it's harder to get that one when I have children at the house. Right.
In marriage. So I would say to somebody that is white knighting like that, like, yeah, men are smart. They're not stupid. And you have to look at the deindustrialization and the all of the factors. The discrimination against men is real. It is not, a lot of these people just be like, oh, it's a cross.
Men may not be stupid, but we're certainly ready to sacrifice ourselves for the opposite sex. That has to change. There has to be some evolving going on, doctor.
Across the board in a lot of different areas. I'm not saying that women aren't discriminated against, but that's not what I'm talking about here. I'm saying
women aren't discriminated against. They aren't. See, this is more of the, false equivalency, the holding out of the olive branch, the opposite sex, or her sex in this case. No, women are not discriminated against.
In the many contexts, you have to look at the context of where men are, where women are, and I'm looking at men, which is something a lot of people don't want to do because they're afraid.
Yeah, I hearken back to the conversation you had years ago with Tucker Carlson on Fox News, and I'm paraphrasing him here, but he essentially said, yeah, you can get a bad deal. Too bad. That's the job. You've just got to suck it up and take it.
What I say, guys, She argued with Tucker Carlson. He's right wing. That's what you're going to get as a right winger, enslavement.
Do you see any of that attitude shifting on the right?
No, she isn't.
I think these are just particular people who, have a podcast or have something they want to work with. But when I talk to average men, they totally get this, and they're the ones that matter. They're the ones I'm speaking to. And what I would say is those men do understand the risks in a way that they didn't before, and they're weighing things very heavily. All the young men I talk to, I have one chapter on fraternity men, and they let me come into their frat house and hang out with them and their dog and talk to them, about life, about college, and all of them had liberal girlfriends, and all of them were.
All of them had liberal girlfriends. Right. So that title just means it's opposite. Women who title themselves as liberal are not liberal. They're against the freedom of men. They're actually the opposite. And again, like you say, guys are learning, she says, but they all have girlfriends, and they're all liberal girlfriends, right? That's really apathy. That's real men on strike, isn't it? No, guys, these guys know they're in danger. And they're saying, no, I just prioritize having a woman in my life over everything else. So these guys, they're not really learning, are they, Dr. Smith?
Were concerned. They were concerned about that they could be kind of taken to the cleaners, and mostly they were concerned that their values, it was their value system would not be as important to their children, say maybe as the wives, and that was something that they totally understood in a way that I think 10 years ago men didn't really understand. But yeah, I think the right, I mean, they've got.
Well, they didn't care about it. It's not that they lacked understanding. They didn't care about it. Their care was having the woman there. They didn't care about their children.
Their own kind of white knighting, and there's just this whole thing of being chivalrous. I think it's just an ingrained evolutionary type thing where they're just indoctrinated into this white knight.
Thank you for saying and admitting that it's ingrained. So since it's ingrained, this has nothing to do with the ways. Like what happened in the 60s wasn't because people changed. It's because 1960s technology reached to the point that women could ditch their men. But women always wanted to ditch their men. People haven't changed, but our environment has.
Behavior, and Josh Hawley's the same way. He wrote the book Manhood, which is it's a good book, but it's like he says just run towards any kind of risk like marriage, and I'm like, well, if you can't beat a dead horse, I mean, if you've got someone unwilling to work with you, what are you going to do, right?
Well, you can find a good wife. Finding a good family court is a different challenge.
Now, listen, this is why this guy's such a failure. You can find a good wife, but you can't find a good family court. Dude, if good wives existed, you would need a good family court. See what he's doing? He's trying to shift the blame for female nature onto some exterior institute.
Challenge altogether. I want to
Yes.
go back to something.
This guy doesn't give a shit about men's rights. He gives a shit. What he cares about is getting with a woman. That's it. Elam, you should be a dating coach. Just get over with and become a dating coach.
You just said about the chivalry.
Mhm.
And I often wonder how much of the problem, I totally get second wave feminism, now third wave, it's been horrible for men across the board. There's no excuse for it and no defending it. But I also have to wonder how much of this female-centric stuff that we're dealing with.
What makes you think that first wave was any better with them handing out white feathers to guys so they'd go die in war? Right? Feminism has been the same throughout, so there's no point in breaking it up into ways.
With also involves the romantic ethic that men have with women. This idea of pedestalizing women, of treating their needs and wants as more important than the man's.
Well, all you're saying is romance means worship. Romance is female worship. Thanks for admitting that, Elam. Because romance, at least used to be in people's minds, two people loving one another. But now you're exposing it for what it is.
That has been, I don't know if it's evolutionary. I know it's been with us since about the year 1100 or so, when courtly love was introduced in the medieval European courts, which took the military ethic and superimposed it on the pair bonding that was happening. And we've had an ethic ever since of elevating women, and even
Men working for women is not pair bonding.
to the point that it appears now we live in a society that morality flows through women, that we judge what's moral, what's right or wrong by women's feelings and women's thoughts. I wonder about your thoughts on that.
Well, that's always been that way, dude.
I think in the old days, there were plenty of bachelors, and you really couldn't get people to get men to get.
Prohibition was female led and female fueled. It didn't last because everyone wanted to drink, even the women. But the reason it had any success at all was because it was female driven. It has always been there.
Married. You used to have to entice them with something. Men didn't want to get married. They felt like it just, they were doing other things. It wasn't that important to have a woman. In today's world, I truly think that men are judged by what woman they have. And if you can't get a woman, you're now an incel or some complete loser. And when
that has always been true. I mean, what do you think a courtesan is? Dr. Helen Smith, you heard of courtesans, right? Very wealthy man would pay a gorgeous woman to be on his arm. Maybe they had sex, maybe they weren't. But it was really to show off his status. I'm so wealthy, I've got this gorgeous woman on my arm.
you go back to the morality, I actually studied morality. When I was in grad school for my PhD, I did a study looking at Carol Gilligan's work. And so Carol Gilligan, she's the psychologist from Harvard. So she wrote the book In a Different Voice, and In a Different Voice said that women look at things in terms of care and empathy and relationships, and that's
well, that's a lie. Because you admit that women have no empathy for men. So they don't look through a lens of empathy.
Equal or higher plane than men. And Lawrence Kohlberg, who is another psychologist, said he looked at it in terms of men. When you ask them a moral dilemma, look at things in terms of justice and fairness. And I think what we're seeing in the country is people want us to think in terms of feelings. I'm a thinking person.
Sorry, but justice is built on feelings as well, doctor. You see an injustice, you get angry. That's a feeling. It's just that men are able to think in higher concepts. They have the real empathy. They can say, I'm not just angry for myself. I can look at things and how they affect other people. The golden rule came from a man. Because men have real empathy.
But I think the majority of people in our country, and especially with the internet and everything going on, are feeling, and they want you to feel, because if you feel, it's easy to swing somebody. If you're thinking an irrational person, it's a lot harder to control you. So I think a lot of...
But a rational person can still feel. That's the thing. That's why I don't like to break this down to feelings, because the idea is that feelings in themselves will lead you down the wrong path. Sorry, but feelings led by a sense of true morality are good. They're the fuel for morality. They're the fuel for a sense of justice. So it's not that the women are using an emotional path. It's just that they're unjust.
What you're talking about has to do also with control of men, control of men's bodies, control of men's spaces, because
What did I just say?
we don't want any type of thinking or logic when it's so easy to sway women. They're just more gullible and
No, they're not. No, they're not. Is it, they're unjust and they're willing to be unjust towards men. They're not gullible. You must think we're gullible, doctor, to talk like that to us.
I think that they are just more easily persuaded. And in terms of morality,
They're only more easily persuaded into things they want in the first place. A good scam artist, they scam a person with what they want. Women want to dominate men, and they want the opportunity to exercise their sadistic tendencies on us. So they're not gullible.
um, I think
Invading a male space is an act of hostility. It's a declaration of war.
that when we dismiss justice and fairness is what the United States of America's constitutional system has been built on, and it's now being built on feeling and offending someone. So if you feel
To be honest, I mean, look, the founding fathers, the only reason they broke off from England is because they wanted power for themselves. The average person didn't give a shit. No, it's the upper crust men who were over here saying, we want a power grab. We want to be on top.
like a woman, and women are more, I'm not saying all women, but most women are more into that feeling aspect. So that we see all our institutions now with this whole thing of feeling. I felt I was abused. Did it happen? I don't know, but I felt. So
Are you suggesting women shouldn't have the right to vote, Dr. Smith? If women are all about feeling and the lack of justice, they should be kept out of politics altogether, according to your logic, if you're going by logic. Now, to me, I wouldn't keep women out of voting. I just punish them for their crimes. So they invade a male space, bring the hammer down, bring out a punishment, bring consequences for bigotry. That's how you handle people. That's how you handle your citizens.
we now ascribe to that feeling it's a powerful thing. The woman says she feels something, everyone stops and listens. If a man says he feels something, he's a complainer and they denigrate him. But all
Right. Thank you. Again, what you said at the beginning, this is reinforcing it. This is all natural. And women have power men lack because people like women and don't like men.
of this is about the power of the United States to turn it honestly into a socialist country so that it is so easy to capture.
Hold it. Socialist country? Let's bring that back again.
Happen? I don't know, but I felt. So we now ascribe to that feeling it's a powerful thing. The woman says she feels something, everyone stops and listens. If a man says he feels something, he's a complainer and they denigrate him. But all of this is about the power of the United States to turn it honestly into a socialist country so that it is so easy to capture, so much easier. Let's say it's not easy, but
Are you suggesting that a socialist country is bad? And are you suggesting that women are naturally socialist? You admitted that women do 80% of the consumer spending. Women are hardcore capitalist. So no one's turning this into a socialist country. A socialist country would be good for men. No, feminists are hardcore capitalist, Dr. Smith. They choose men who have the most wealth. That's going to be the capitalist men, not the socialist men. You got to look for the chinks in the armor with these people.
it's easier to capture women because they go with, if you get on TikTok and you make a good argument to some women, they're just oriented towards being more collective, and their moral sense is, I used to think it wasn't different. Like I fought to think that it wasn't because I didn't feel that way, but I learned I'm not normal. I mean, unfortunately.
But being collective is good. If Congress passes a law, Congress is working as a collective for the country as a collective. The law affects everybody. Society, civilization is built on collectivism. So suggesting that women are a collective, I mean, look at war. Militaries are a collective. Every man knows his place. There's a hierarchy, and they work together. So you can't have society without collectivism. It's just that women's collectivism is used to harm men. That's the issue.
I mean, I don't know. But I found out I wasn't normal. And the more normal way to be, I never understood because I'd be like talking to a woman and they'd be like telling me about how they felt. Well, I felt like if I ask a woman, what reproductive right does a man have? Well, I felt bad because I had to carry the baby. Okay, but the man, if you force him to pay 18 years of child support, like Warren Farrell says, that's using his body and just in the same way. They can't.
It's not that they're feeling. It's that they don't want to admit that they're bad people, Dr. Smith. The plantation owner, he feels the same way about his slaves, right? You can say, hey, the slaves want the same kind of lifestyle you have. He's not going to come out and say, yeah, but I'm a greedy bastard and I'm willing to enslave people to have my easy lifestyle. He's not going to say that. So you think women are going to be any different?
Fathom that. Only what they feel. So it's almost like we become this therapy culture of narcissism, and we acquiesce now to the most narcissistic and self-entitled people. And I actually wrote a book, gosh, in the 90s called The Scarred Heart, where I looked at school shooters and not, but I looked at one of the traits they had. It was that same thing. A lot of the youth were going through this whole thing of narcissism that's being fed in the schools with the whole self-esteem movement. So all of this goes back, so it's so ingrained now over the years. And I guess that's what I find interesting. And it's like every 13 years or something, I write a book about it. And I don't know why, but I find it all just.
A lot of school shooting is due to feeling disrespected, right? That's a lot of it too, as opposed to just narcissism. And it's still the frustration, right? Someone goes on a shooting spree because, like, what's his face? Elliot Rodger, yeah, he was a narcissist, but he also felt disrespected, right? Like, hey, how come I'm not choosing? How come I'm worthy of female attention? Aren't I a good guy? Right? And also, there have been more and more female shooters now. So you should cover that too, Doctor.
I just, it's just something very interesting to me how the culture has evolved, but it affects people's day-to-day lives. And I think with this newest book, what I want people to understand is it is stories about men and how they feel, but it's about human beings who have real issues, and like these things are really affecting men and families and people. And
I mean, just men. You can leave it at that. You can't tackle our issues if we have to include women who are doing the attacking. Never mind men. Hey, children are being affected. Other people, in other words, women are being affected. No, no, no. Doctor, that's not how you tackle this issue. This is a failed strategy.
I think people think men don't have any feelings. And I was just saying that people don't look at feelings, but men do have feelings. And I do think men's feelings are important also in addition to women's. I'm not saying.
Well, that's kind of you. Right, right. I have to break this to you, but feelings is what matters. The sense of injustice is a feeling. People can't fight for their rights unless they have bad feelings over being abused.
They're the most important thing in the world, but I'm saying that their men's feelings are equal to women's, and we're acting like men don't feel. And I think when you talk to women, they don't have any understanding. It's almost like they're missing an empathy chip for men.
Well,
Not almost, they do lack it. Women have no empathy for men. That's why I say the golden rule is no doubt made by a man. Someone who could look at other people and say, look, I don't want this done to me. The neighbor across the street probably doesn't want it done to him. You're admitting by your own experiences that women lack empathy for men. Therefore, they're going to lack morality when it concerns men.
and to be fair to both sides of the equation, men handle and process and deal with feelings in a much different way, generally speaking, than women. It's more internal, it's more action-oriented, kinetic, dealing with emotions. But we have become a society that values.
Well, dude, that's because men know that they're going to be told to shut up if they complain. They don't have the same avenue that women have.
Emoting
Yes.
more than anything else. I'm also wondering, I wanted to go back to one more point about this feeling-centered society that we live in. You know, for most,
Jesus, this is not feeling centered. This is simple bigotry. When the KKK is lynching a man, they don't go around and say, oh, they're feeling centered. No, they just hate other people.
of human history,
God.
when people married, it was to unite family interests, to be a more productive part of their community.
No, no, no. Guys, people got married because they needed children to look after them in their old age. That's it. Okay, maybe not. There's one other thing. Consolidating power. Rich family would marry into each other and say, we keep the money within the family. We'll marry kingdom to kingdom, right? So that we all hold power. But for the most part, for the average person, it was that someone look after you in their old age. Because guess what? When the birth rates are falling. Why? Because we have retirement funds now. So women are saying, why am I bothering with children? I never wanted to. And now I don't have to. I got a retirement fund. I got a pension. All this talk about community, guys, that's dressing up, you know, that's putting lipstick on a sow. Again, this Elam guy, he's not for men's rights. He's for marriage. He's about getting the girl, right? Marriage is important because it's all about community and children. While you're wrong, Paul.
To serve other things, to serve God for religious reasons. But we
Are you suggesting the atheists don't get married?
did change that whole model, which served human beings quite well for a very, very long time, to the last 150 years or so, people getting married based on romantic infatuation as the basis for the marriage. And then, of course, so when infatuation fades or love fades, then that is viewed as a failure of the marriage. And that usually gets pinned on men. I wonder if you think that could have part of this equation of moving from a intellectual thought-based society to everything being based on feelings, if the human pair bond that's been.
Dude, 150 years ago, if women had pensions, they probably wouldn't have bothered having children, just like they do now.
Changed so drastically in the West could have something to do with that.
Well, yeah, and I think more and more like what we're seeing is so many, there aren't really communities as much anymore, right? Everybody moves. I mean, I think I read like what people move every 7 years or more. So we don't have those tight-knit communities. So
Well, Smith, communities are centered around women. The guy gets married to a woman. He circles his whole life around her. Uh, she hangs around other women. And so their husbands hang around each other, right? Or hangs around. The women are the nucleus. Without the women, there is no community.
we had these tight-knit communities and everybody knew each other, so they felt more trusting. In today's society, we don't have trusting as trusting a society. We know that in other cultures where that trust bond is broken, that
This is bullshit. Whether people trust each other or not has nothing to do with women's sadism towards men. A lack of trust isn't making women invade male spaces and make false accusations. Sorry, Dr. Smith, this is bullshit. This is gibberish.
society falls apart. And I think that's what you're seeing here. I think people now don't trust each other. And I think, going back to, I mean, I guess to me, I mean, I do think, I don't know, to me, romantic love is honestly important when you had people just being married off or something. I mean, I guess those marriages did work better,
Oh
but
man, she's struggling with it. So, how old are you? How long have you been a psychologist? And you can't answer this right off the bat?
we don't know who psychologically or how the people actually felt at that time. I mean, were they happier? I don't know, but I would
Well, marriage was about survival. We don't need it for survival, and guess what? The women are abandoning it, right? Well, they're they're accepting bribes from men, but then they eventually divorce the guy because the woman doesn't like the man, right?
say that our communities have broken down, our trust in each other has broken down, and our willingness to put ourselves out for others, which is part of what the old marriage bond would have been, is
No, it wasn't. The old marriage bond was women using men. He did the heavy lifting. She produced children who would look after her. It was everything that was done by the woman was centered around herself. There was never any sacrifice, ever, by your gender to society. They never needed to. They're in charge. It's always been a matriarchy, always. Men would work in the mines. Men would go to war. Men would fish out in the oceans. Women stayed home, right? There's always been an imbalance between the genders.
not there as much because people see themselves as um, I think they don't see themselves as part of the community as much as they did in the past, and we don't know each other. And I think the more we go away from that, and I think even that's coming into internet dating. I mean, we've got so many strangers just trying to hook up on the internet, and so when you look at that,
Yeah, but men don't give a shit about community if the dating worked for them. If they went on the internet and they found a woman who found them sexy and respected them and loved them, men wouldn't give a shit about community. When men talk about community, what they're saying is, I want a woman in my life.
I think it becomes even more that we don't trust each other because then you hear the horror stories and you see yourself on the Facebook page, and now everybody's afraid to even try to go out or do anything. So what you see is a
What
lot
do you mean, everybody? Women aren't afraid. Men are afraid. Why are you trying to make this gender neutral?
of men, particularly
This
know
is what I'm talking about. She'll go up to the finish line, but she'll never cross it. Once they start talking about gender neutral terms, you know they are not going to be for men.
knowing that they're going to be the victims of and getting no help, I think then we're seeing more and more people just saying that it's not worth it. I'm not even going to try. And a lot of young men are just staying home. And in reality, there's just more to do. Used to in the old days, maybe you're just home bored and they told you to go work on the farm or something. And now you can get on, you can play video games.
This excuse making. This is excuse making. Men who play video game stuff would still, if they would jump to dating if it was worthwhile.
Games. You can get on online poker. You can go play poker with your friends. A lot of young men are into, doing crypto. There's a lot of activities now. And so that would be part of it. But I get your point. And I do think it goes to the trust issue. And when we have an antitrust society like we are going.
Again, you're full of shit. It has nothing to do with societal trust. How much longer do we have to go? Another 15 minutes. I haven't watched this whole thing. This is agonizing now.
Towards more and more as we become more polarized. There's more and more, less and less trust. We used to all be Americans. Now you're on this side, I'm on that side. And
what has this got to do with men and women? We all used to be Americans.
I think also it's almost like a division between men and women. I think
it is a division. This is what this issue is about. That's what your book is about.
A recent article. They have a bunch of articles like in the Wall Street Journal or the Washington Post about how men and women, there's sort of like this kind of wedge between them now with the political, men being more on the right, women being more on the left. And
No. The wedge is put by the women, period. The women do not like the men. They're not interested in the men. They're hostile to men. That's what the wedge is. This is not a left-right issue. And again, a lot of left-leaning men went to the right because of the abuse of the left. So men aren't more right than women. That is just a bold-faced lie. I don't think you're merely ignorant of this doctrine.
I think that makes it very hard.
Yes,
And today, because a lot of the women, I think 71% of those women don't want to date a man if they're voted for Trump. So that excludes almost all, most men.
Well, the thing is, they don't see that Trump is a bad guy so much as the vote for Trump is a signal to them that the man is not willing to submit 100%. Again, remember, Dr. Smith, this is about dominance. A man voting right suggests that the man is still in his heart thinking about himself. He has to submit 100%.
A lot of men.
I'd like to get back to your book for a moment here. And we're running a little short of time, but let's move on with this. Regarding your discussions with men, I mean, you got their perspective. You obviously listen, and folks, you'll get a link here. Get this book; it's really great.
Thank you.
Please do. But I want to know, what sort of direction do you see for men from where they're at right now, with everything that they've shared with you about what life?
You're the men's rights activist. Shouldn't you know this answer already?
Is like, what they think about the future, where they're going. Do you have any words for them about what you think is possible solutions to this almost intractable dilemma that men are facing?
I think there's twofold. There's one for an individual man, and I give tips in the book for individual men. And then there's sort of the governmental, societal things. Like, I think across the board with institutions, I do think bringing back some all male schools might be helpful. I think boys, and I talk about this in the beginning of the book, boys never.
How does that stop women from stripping us of our rights? Dr. Smith. No, I do agree female teachers downmark boys, but the answer isn't to sequester boys away from women. The answer is to bring consequences to those female teachers, get them fired, make sure they don't work again. That's how you do it. When someone breaks into your house, you don't say, well, maybe I better move to another neighborhood. You incarcerate the guy who broke into your house.
Never really see any male role models. That was the biggest theme of the book. No male role models, dads are absent, men have been sort of pushed out of the home or have.
Here's another thing. I want young boys to have experience with girls. You know, like young guys hit puberty and get rejected by girls and learn that it's about status. If young guys don't have experience with the opposite sex until they're 20 something, they may have no immune system. They may not be prepared. Also, a lot of these all boys schools, younger boys would be abused by older boys, right? It's nice to have girls in there to distract the older guys.
Left the home for various reasons. So I think we need more emphasis on male role models. That emphasis, I think all boys schools. I know, but Michael Gorian talked about this, but all male schools. A lot of the men that I talked to who went to all male schools said it was really one of the best things that happened to them. There are other men, experts who say differently that the all male schools, but I think the fact that we don't boys go into society and they don't see male role models. They go, the doctor's a woman, the teacher's a woman.
You don't need an all-male school to hire male teachers. And again, guys shouldn't be forced to segregate themselves from girls in order to be treated properly and equally.
And they only see their, mom at home or mom, is at work, but like it's just so female based, a lot of single moms. And I just think that we need more role models.
Male hostile, not female based, male hostile.
So absolutely, I think one of the biggest things what we would want to do is to be more welcoming, that dads need to play a bigger part, and the laws need to be changed to include dads and fathers in the family, because we have excluded them to the detriment of the family. So I would
Well, again, you have to deal with human psychology. The laws can only go so far, but the man wants to be with a woman. The woman doesn't give a shit about being with the man. So the man submits. So men's attitude has to change. Men have to evolve. Men have to deal with the idea that they have to be alone. They're not going to have that woman in their life. Because if they submit, then there's no reason for them complaining. They're accepting the injustice.
definitely think that those are some of the themes. The other one, I mean, as far as the government goes, the DEI really does affect men. Men across the board did tell me, from the young ones to the older ones, that it affected them whether they go to college and they have to agree with the liberal or the left-leaning teacher to.
You mean the feminist teacher? Again, feminism is, Dr. Smith, you got to get over this. Feminism is not liberal. It's not progressive. It's regressive. And it's authoritarian. That's how you have to describe it accurately.
Being called into the HR department at work because they might have said the wrong thing, to the older men who are, have to placate women at work because they're afraid that they'll be turned in for various reasons. So I think there are a lot of factors, both legal.
Yeah, exactly. HR and what's happening to men. So again, how is having an all-male school going to stop that? Right? How is having male role models do that? The males head of work, you're saying, no, they're trying to placate the women and submit to them. No, men don't need male role models so much as they need to change. They have to overcome their psychology, their bad male psychology.
And personal that we need to change. And then as far as individual men, I guess I would give advice. I mean, this is a little strong, but for men who are dating, I would definitely, I mean, I'm getting this from the men themselves, but I would definitely start maybe really looking at it and avoiding liberal women if they're too liberal. And I say that because liberal women.
Yeah. Go to right-wing women who want to use you. These right-wing women, they divorce. They make men pay child support. They don't respect their men.
And tend to be more denigrating of men. They also are more emotionally unstable. Jonathan Haidt, who's a psychologist, did studies looking at the
An emotionally stable woman who still feels sadistic pleasure over harming you. It's all the same, doctor. Doesn't matter if they're emotionally stable. It matters, do they like the man they're with? Do they respect them? Do they want to, do they wish well for them? That's what's important.
liberal women. They found that their mental health is the worst of all the groups. They spend so much time, over 5 hours a day, on TikTok and various internet games. And I mean, I think that you don't have to totally
Are you telling these women to touch grass?
avoid it, but I think you have to be really tread water lightly if you are dating a liberal
So all these women who handed out white feathers in the First World War, were they on TikTok?
woman. If you're conservative, now if you're another liberal, even the liberal men, though, I've gotten lots of letters from liberal men saying that the liberal women treat them the same way. They're not any better. In fact, sometimes they're worse. So I think that one piece of advice: watch the women you're dating. Don't date liberal women as often. If you are dating a liberal woman, some of the things to watch out for would definitely be, one of the men told me, and it was so true. He says,
When they say she's emotionally unstable, liberal women just can't hide their hatred as much or their contempt. So you're suggesting that men go to traditional women who know how to mask their contempt. Thank you, doctor.
make sure she gives as much as she takes. A lot of the women
Oh,
are
God.
takers, and if
Oh,
you
my
feel
God.
like the woman that you're with
If you tried that, she'll dump you. Women dump guys if he wants to go Dutch. I mean, this level of PUA at this point in the game.
as a taker, I would absolutely stop and think through, is this really the woman I want to be with, or if I want children? The other thing I found out that was a common thing was almost all the young guys want kids. Some of them said they wanted three or four. And there actually was a new poll at Pew Research showing that, most 12th grade girls now don't want to get married. I mean, that was sort of, and they're 12th graders. I don't know if it means anything, but almost all the boys, 76% of the boys want to get married. But the bigger thing is single guys more so than women want to have children. And if men really, really want to be dads, and to those men, I would say,
There you go. Women aren't that interested in children. They usually they only use children to get what they want. Right. It's the men who want children. And so women are not for communities either. Or I should say their communities is strictly a community of women friends.
that I would try to find a woman who really likes children, since so many men, being a father to them is almost more important than being married. And so that's one of the big changes. So many men now want to be dads, but if we don't have laws in place that protect fathers, the children and the men themselves will suffer, because we know that children without dads across the board, every single man I talked to that did not have a, a present father or a good father, all had problems with women in their lives. They overcame them for the most part, but it was very difficult. And so having a dad is honestly, I think it is one of the biggest factors in how men and women do relate to each other. Women too. I think every woman I see who's had a very difficult time with their dad, and I
Okay. So this has nothing to do with dating advice now, does it? Or dating liberal women. If you want to affect this, you've got to change the divorce laws. You've got to get rid of alimony. You've got to get rid of child support. You've got to stop women from estranging by kicking the men away from their children. You have to fight on a political and legal level.
think just honestly, I just think a lot more liberal women have trouble with their fathers. I mean, ultimately, what liberalism is
Daddy's issues, right? Women have a natural contempt for men, and they want to dominate, and they have a sadistic streak that has nothing to do with their fathers or their lack of fathers. This is just innate to women. So, of course, this is her obscuring the issues.
I hate dad. I want, they even say that they hate their father, they hate men, and it's very, and for sometimes for no reason. It's just
So that traditional woman who's divorcing you, divorce raping you, and had that good dad, you know. The important thing is a woman has daddy issues, right? Yeah. Let's make excuses, right? Pick a good one, right? Traditional women blow, and not in a good way, Dr. Smith. They're just better at hiding their contempt, and they're better at doing the long game con on men. In that regard, they're worse than liberal women.
they're told that by society, or they take out of context something a man did. And so, I think there are a lot of things. And I guess if you read more into the book, you can see I've got some more tips in there for men on both levels. But I
Why
hope
would you need tips? Men don't need tips. Men need these issues handled. Men need these inequalities and injustices faced.
men will find these stories interesting. And I know some of the men that were in the book, I did give the book to, and a lot of them said, I read the other men's stories and it really helped me understand how to go forward myself, or it helped me understand really how to deal with my two sons that I have. So I think the important thing for dads or people who've already been through all this is
Really? How are they dealing with their sons? I'm interested. I'm interested. You never get any of these details.
to look at it and say, what, how can we help the younger generations also to avoid some of the problems that we've had to deal with?
Sounds
And
like very sound advice. I think the only thing I would possibly add to that, with the men I've worked with for a long time now directly, I've also been stressed the idea that in this society, in our current environment, men need to learn how to be comfortable alone.
yeah.
Ah, finally, one of the only good thing so far I've heard from Paul Elam so far.
That if you don't have that first, you're prone to make bad decisions with women.
That
So be all right with being alone, but you still want to get with women. So you just reneged on what you just said. Okay. All right.
is so true. Everybody will tell you you've got to have a woman. You're a loser. But you know what? It's not true. It's not absolutely. Now I would say the same thing to women. It's like, you know what? This is ridiculous. We're treating men like
Why would you bring women up? Everyone already says that about women anyway. No one bothers women for being single. So why would you bring them up?
women. Oh, if you don't have a woman, you're some kind of, come on. And the thing is, the pressure, people also put the pressure on themselves because one of the polls shows that parents, and I think this is actually a mistake, parents no longer pressure their kids to have children or get married, especially like both sexes. And I think our society is telling people in the same kind of thing, like, oh, especially women, don't get married, don't have children. And I think that has made more women more aggressive and more likely to say they want to be alone, and it's pushing the sexes further and further.
But it's not a talk. You either want it or you don't. Again, you can't scam someone with something that they don't want. If a woman actually wants to get married, telling her you shouldn't won't affect that. No, women deselect men because they never wanted to be with us in the first place, doctor. You admitted it at the beginning.
apart. But I hear what you're saying, and I absolutely do believe that. And I think men going their own way. I have some of those men in the book, and those men were doing better. They tried to get a girlfriend. It's just, it wasn't their thing. And
It was their thing. They were deselected. When the prime men going their way went by the name of Human. And Human, he got himself a girlfriend, and he turned on his own male subs. He turned on his fellow MGTOW, which means the only reason he was MGTOW was because he was deselected. He wasn't making any choices. He didn't choose to be MGTOW. He was told he was MGTOW.
there are just a certain percentage of people who are fine alone. It's okay. I agree. And certainly if I was counseling someone and this was where I think that that is definitely something that people should feel comfortable with. And I think the worst thing you can do, like you were pointing out, would be to be so desperate that you're so afraid to be alone that you would take a person that really is going to harm your life. And this is a
No one wants to be alone. What you just got through talking about community. Community is about being with other people. What's that expression? No man's an island. The simple fact is you've got to turn around and say, guys, the reason why being alone is painful, but being accused, slandered, and lied about, that's worse. That's how you have to approach this.
real potential in the society for men that a woman can easily ruin your life and it
There
can
you go.
it's through no fault of your own, you know?
Absolutely. Is there anything I haven't asked you, but as we're closing here, anything I haven't asked you about the book that you would like people to know, or any other comments on this?
I guess I would look at the last question that we were kind of stressed that we didn't get time to, but like, what is going to happen from here? Like, where are we going to go if we keep along this routine? Like, if we keep denigrating men and we keep laws in place that keep men down, like, where is this going to go? And I'd almost like to get your thoughts on that. I mean, I kind of go back and forth thinking like, well, men will just become more apathetic. Will marriage just sort of recede? Will we just become like Europe and kind of like, you know, everyone's just maybe has a relationship and kids are just sort of born out of wedlock. We don't have children
Well, that's happening in the States already. There's all kinds of single mothers on welfare. What are you talking about?
and we're seeing some of that, or will it go to the
Why are you bringing up nationality anyway? We Americans, we're so much better than Europeans. This has something to do with men's issues, right?
extreme where at some point men will say enough? What are your thoughts?
Well, I agree with you. I'm hoping that as time passes, more and more men speak to you and to the other men around them and to society about these problems. What I try to stress to men is consciousness and accountability.
Really, men, accountability for men. I agree so much that men have to actually get on with their life, not just get on with their lives, get into activism. You can't get on with your life until you get into activism and change things for the better. That's the accountability I have from men, right? So I do agree with Elam there. But the whole point of activism is to put accountability onto women, but not just accountability, consequences, punishment. There's got to be incarceration for women who tell lies. And I am seeing that once in a while. So that's what's necessary. That's going to be ramped up. I have a video where a woman was incarcerated for lying. And we need to see a lot more of that.
I think that's one area we've really shorted women. they have heard a message of not being.
There you go. This is why this guy's a loser and why he's never done anything for men. There's more false equivalency. Women are attacking men. They're 100% responsible. There's no point in bringing them up and saying they're victims too. They aren't. They are not the victims. Elam, women are not victims in any sense of the term. They are the perpetrators. This is begging by Elam. This is him begging the opposite sex to be nice to men. See, I know you're lynching us, but just think. It'd be like a black man saying, those white men lynching black men, it hurts them too. It makes them look bad. All right.
Accountable for
Yeah.
decades now, and you see it expressed in their behavior and the things that you talk about in the book, and that's a serious problem. But I found that men who are conscious, who look at their own impulses and their own quick decisions and take responsibility for their choices. I've talked to so many men that ended up in disastrous marriages and divorces, but when they look back, the red flags were there. They were all over the place. But in their pursuit of
This is more choose the right girl bullshit.
women, they ignored the red flags in order to achieve the bond.
There's only one woman for every guy, dude. So if these guys paid attention to the red flags, if 50% of women were red flag material, that means 50% of men have to deal with being single. You always leave that out.
And fulfill themselves that way, and it ended up costing them dearly.
Just choose the right girl, guys. Never mind your rights, just choose the right girl.
So my thought is that those of us who are talking to men in this society do need to stress that probably 90% of men's rights issues, the stuff they face in family courts, can be ameliorated with a different attitude toward themselves, toward life, toward their decisions.
Yeah, you hear that, guys? Don't blame the opposite sex where it all comes from. 90% is on you. Your bad choices. He even did activism with air quotes. This guy is a clown. He's a joke.
With women, you talked about finding a good partner, wife, whatever. That's something, honestly, most men don't do very well. They base things on physical attraction, what happens to them emotionally when they're with somebody.
Oh, so you're about arranged marriages now. You guys were griping, it's all about, it's all about the pair bonding, right? But in the past, they had arranged marriages, and we don't know if that was done, but this is what you're arguing for. Don't marry a woman because you're attracted to her. Marry her for what? For what?
And it puts blinders on them, and they make bad decisions.
I agree. And I talked to one man who had gone through two marriages and making those sorts of decisions based on looks and so many things. But his final marriage has been wonderful for the last 13 years. And I said, well, what would your advice be to other men? And
Third time's a charm. Hey, let's talk about this married loser who got married 3 times. Let's not talk about the fact that he has no rights in his marriage. This third marriage, does he have any rights in it? No. So what are you even going on about?
he said, find an outlier.
This is an immense rights activist group. This is a marriage cult.
And that would, you find somebody who isn't like the others. And I think men sometimes are afraid to find the outlier. Maybe they're looking and they get very caught up in that physical attraction or how somebody looks or how they come across, but they're not looking at.
Smith, why are you still talking about men getting together with women? I thought you were about men's issues, right?
Somebody who, I would say to men, find a woman who loves men. Find a woman who loves men, and that you will be nice.
They don't exist. If you want to prove me wrong, Get a guy that demands that the woman go Dutch every time, not just once, always. Split everything. She pays for her own drinks. See how many women turn out to be someone who loves men. Of course, I pay for my own drinks and my own meals, and I don't want engagement ring and all these other things because, I love you for yourself. The man should point at the woman's dog and say, I want to live in your life like your dog does. I hang around the house and take naps, and you come home from work and scratch me behind my ears. That would be a woman who loves men. I dare you to go and find one for us, Dr. Smith.
20% there. And another man told me, find a woman that you take a bullet for. And I would have to say that's another good piece of advice because
why would you want to die? What's the point of harming yourself for a woman? If it's a loving relationship, you don't talk about dying for her. If you die for her, you won't be there with her. She won't be there for you. You'll be a corpse. Dying for you is the ultimate talk of enslavement.
It's not because she's a woman, it's because of who she is. Look for women and their actions.
That was the case, men would marry other men. It's not because you're a woman, it's because of the quality of the personhood you are. Well, I know this great guy who's a friend of mine who treats me with respect. He's great. I'm not attracted to him sexually, but he's just a great person who cares about me as a person. So I'll marry him. Helen, this is gibberish, what you're talking about here.
Attributes and the values that you hold dear. And back to your point, I think when you're hold yourself accountable and you know yourself well, you know what your values are and you know what you're looking for. And when you know what you're looking for, you're more likely to find it.
I can tell you from personal experience that I want to go back to something you said about rejecting people that take more than they give.
Holy shit. The last 10 minutes is talking about marriage advice.
When I had bad relationships, bad marriages, but when I finally adopted that way of living, it took me about 2 years to meet somebody that was right. I've been with her.
So again, Elam, you don't have any rights with this new wife. It doesn't matter if she's good to you. She shouldn't have power over you. If she was an actual good woman, she wouldn't marry you until everything was equal legally. But if everything was equal legally, she wouldn't have gotten married to you. Okay. What we got? 1 minute. I'm not going to bother with the rest. This is lame. They say, Helen Smith, she's B tier. She's good, but in the end, she is not pro-male. In the end, she turns into like dating and marriage advice. It's only these liberal women who are bad, right? Don't go and fight for your rights as people, as men. Just look for the right girl. And again, Elam, that's why, even though 100,000 subs sounds good, you've been around forever and you talk on men's issues. You talk about issues that affect 50% of the male population, or not male, the population period. By rights, your channel should be huge. You know why it isn't? Because you're a do-nothing and you're anti-male. Anyway, we'll end it here.